All right, friends. Our speaker this morning is going to give us a very special message. And it's actually a little variation on what is in the bulletin and what was in the email this morning. Because in there was Jesus, Prince of Peace. But in this short time, he's been elevated. Now he's King of Peace. Okay? And so here is Kathy Bornino to tell us about Jesus, King of Peace.
Thank you. It's actually how it was at the first place, but there was a little miscommunication. Oh, well, so it is. So, King of Peace. How does a person get to be king? Well, historically, there were many times that kingship was hereditary. The son became king. If we look in the stories of the Bible, once the Jewish people wanted kings, and Samuel said, yeah, not such a great idea, but oh well, okay. So they'd have a king that was great, and the son would be terrible. And that son would be great, and then terrible. That went on. There's that back and forth, and not a great plan. They lost their kingdom. How else does a person get to be king? Well, sometimes the most skillful warrior would become the king. But they didn't necessarily have the heart or the understanding of the whole group and what was best for the group. Some indigenous societies elected their king. I know in ancient Ireland, the king was elected based on the courage that he or she showed. The courage and the understanding of what was good for the group. There's a social science research center in Berkeley called Greater Good Science Center, and they did research on what makes a natural leader. And they found the same thing. It was the person with the most courage and heart who understood the group and came up with the best ideas for the good of the group and could enlist support for those. So how do we wind up with kings who are dictators or bullies, or presidents around the world who are dictators or bullies? How does that happen? Well, they usually know how to play on fears, how to amplify fears, and also how to play on resentments and pockets of rage in a community to turn people against one another to hold power. So if we don't want that, we have to look for something different. And that is something that is offered by our teacher, Jesus. So we say, okay, how did Jesus get to be King of Peace? Well, this is a season of Lent before Easter, and one thing it says in the Gospels is that after he was baptized, Jesus went out to the desert, the wilderness, to pray and fast for 40 days. And he was tempted by the devil, which is Bible speak for he went out to face his fears and his fantasies and work through them, process through them. And fasting made for more clarity of mind, but it also makes you vulnerable. So then you have closer to you your fears and your fantasies. And what were the fears that he faced? Well, they say the devil came and said, "You must be hungry by now. Why don't you turn these stones into bread? Eat the bread." Well, certainly he would have been hungry, but he said, man doesn't live by bread alone, but by every word that comes out of the mouth of God, which is a way of saying, I'm living off the energy of creation because creation, my creator, is flowing through me. And we might look and say, what what kind of starvation do we fear? Most of us here have plenty to eat. Not everybody does in the world, but most of us have plenty of food, but we face fears of lacking other things. Am I going to have enough money for gasoline? Am I going to have enough money to pay insurance? Am I going to have medical care? And we also have FOMO, fears of missing out. I wish I had a relationship with my adult kids like Mrs. Jones does, or I wish I had the figure and vitality and good health of Mrs. Sparkle. Or I wish I could go on luxury trips overseas like Mr. Smith. So we have our fears of missing out. And we have fears of, like the fears of death. And Jesus faced that also. The tempter, or however you want to look at it, facing his own fears or own fantasies, must have thought, well, this is my mission, I think, but am I completely sure in it? Maybe I should test it out. And tempter said, if you're the Son of God, why don't you try throwing yourself off this cliff and see if the angels catch you so you don't crash into the rocks? You might as well test it out here. Right? So we all have fears like that, fears of death, fears of not being able to, not being special enough, not being effective in what we want to do. He must have wondered, will this work? Will I be effective? Will the teachings that I want to give to my people, will they be heard and understood and followed? Or will they just fade away? And we all have those kinds of, some kind of fears of not being heard or understood or seen. Fear of abandonment or feeling abandoned. So we have some echoes of Jesus' fears. And then we also have a fear of, will I have enough energy? Will I be able to? And Jesus must have faced that also. The tempter said, I will give you all the kings and kingdoms of the world. Just do it my way. And Jesus, he must have thought, or I think of his thinking, you know, Father, because he referred to God as Father, but we can call it Divine Mother, Source, whatever works for us. You know, these people around me, they are so set on having a Messiah that will drive out the Romans and restore the kingdom of David. That's the Messiah they're expecting. That's the Messiah they're set on. Couldn't we just try it that way? Couldn't I just get rid of the Romans and help establish a kingdom? But I can see that that probably wouldn't work. The Romans would return in force and everything would be lost. So I get it. It's better to stick with the divine plan, even though I have to wonder if it's going to be effective. I leave that in your hands. And we wonder, are we going to be effective in our job or in our relationships or in our ability to grow the way we want to grow? We face our fears too. So what do we do with those fears? Well, Jesus prayed and fasted. We aren't told exactly how he processed through his fears other than remembering scripture and praying and fasting. And we can certainly use that, and Lent is a time that calls us to maybe every day set aside 20 minutes, a half an hour, to gradually face and work through our fears and our fantasies. And we have tools we can use. It's good to start any practice time with prayer and affirmation. Journaling can help. We also can use tools that have been developed. It's good to realize, okay, how do I register my fears or my fantasies? Does it come as a picture? Is it something I feel in my body? I tense up if I'm angry at a situation, or I cave if I feel sad and I'm mourning, or do I get butterflies in my stomach if I'm afraid? How do I register my fears? Or does it come as a thought that repeats over and over in my head? Well, here's a few possible tools to add to the prayer and affirmation. If you perceive a fear as a picture, then realize that you have like a camera. You can pan out and see that fear a mile away. Well, maybe not a mile away. Maybe that's too far. I can't even see it. But you could pick the distance that's safe, that feels manageable. And it can be far away. We can learn to face down fears gradually. And when we know that we can see it far away against the background of other circumstances, that may help us deal with the fear. So just knowing we can take it at our own pace. Or we could see that we have a big whiteboard and superimpose the fear on the whiteboard, the picture of it, and then erase. And if it's still there, erase some more, and erase some more. Try it, this actually works. Erase some more. And realize, oh, I have some effect over how much it appears to me and how much energy it has in it. Because the fear usually comes out of the past, so it's some kind of impression with energy in it. Emotion is energy in motion. So if we can dispel the energy out of it, it gets less. And if it comes back another day, we see it on the whiteboard and go, oh, wait a minute, I know you. You're an echo. And your eraser hand gets strong. Or if you're somebody who registers fear somewhere in your body, or anger, or rage, or sadness, spend a little time becoming aware of where you feel it, how you feel it, and realize that you have a mighty power in your own spirit, and your own spirit enlivens your body through breath. So you can become aware of where you feel anger or fear or sadness, and breathe through that part of your body. Breathe consciously. The more you breathe consciously, the more conscious you become of your breath. The more you develop a kind of teamwork between you and your body and your mind. We're going to dispel this fear or this sadness or resentment. Or it helps us to breathe sometimes if we move. So see if for you what works is walking out your fear, or running, or dancing, or singing. All of those things help you breathe more deeply with intention and release energy. Or sometimes a fear presents itself, or a resentment, a hurt, as a thought that keeps returning to our mind. Well, a great tool for that is presented in Course in Miracles. My two favorite sentences out of Course in Miracles. One is, nothing real can be threatened. And the other is, I could have peace instead of this, whatever it is I'm experiencing. I need a better way to look at this. It actually says, I need another way to look at this. But if you ask your mind to give you a better way to look at whatever it is, you might get some off-the-wall ideas in the beginning, but your mind and you will get the hang of it and develop teamwork together to where your mind more flexibly gives you a different way of looking at your situation so that you can let go of the resentment or the fear or the hurt or the sadness. We don't just have to pray and shove it away. We can process through our fears and our sadness and our angers. And it can be useful to have a journal or some way we record our process and our progress so we can see that we actually can become more effective with prayer and affirmation and using tools at shifting and dispelling the fears, the resentments, or the hurts that get in the way of our flow, of our identity, of our divine flow, of our divine breath. And Jesus gave us plenty of example. You know, he let go, if he ever really totally entertained the idea, but certainly the collective entertained the idea, you know, we want a Messiah that drives out the Romans. He let go of that idea and accepted. He was here to show us, to explain to us through parables, to demonstrate, to say, look, you don't have to be afraid of death. I will walk through it. I will walk through a challenging death, and I will rise up out of it. You don't have to be afraid. You can follow that example. It wasn't the divine plan for him to do it all for us, but he's there, and he had power, so if we can see that he demonstrated power, then we can believe what he said, that he will be with us to help us. Not do it all for us, but walk beside us as cheerleader and support. So we don't have to do it all alone, but we have to do our part. And not only is that with our personal fears and resentments and hurts, but we are all part of the collective, the human collective unconscious and conscious. And I don't have to tell you, if you turn on any kind of media, you will see floating towards you waves of fears and resentments and negativity. So whatever part of those registers for you is also something for you to help clean up that part of the collective. By, again, using prayer, affirmation, and tools to breathe through it, to dispel it, and to feel your heart grow stronger in the process. To know that no matter what situation anybody is going through, and certainly there are people on the planet going through very, very challenging situations, that we can send light there. We can process out some of our outrage, our sadness, our fear, and we can send light there, which does enter the collective and does reach whoever is open to receiving it and help them. We can do that, and that is our part of electing a king of peace, electing a king of heart and wisdom, and eventually getting rulers that will reflect our collective choices of peace and love and wisdom for all. So a thought that I leave you with that you can use. Actually, I have time. I'm going to add in one other thing because I think it's great. This is out of Isaiah, who was a prophet before Jesus came. And Isaiah was talking about what true fasting is. And to show you that Jesus didn't make all this stuff up, he got it out of Scripture. Isaiah says, true fasting is when you share your bread with the hungry, you shelter the oppressed and homeless, You clothe the naked if you find them. You don't turn your back on your own. Then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your wound will be healed. In other words, by giving courageously, you heal your heart of fears also, or resentments, or hurts. So we have many great ways to do that. So we just want to go away with the thought, I face and release my fears and breathe in the energy of divine love that I am, following my King of Peace.